Good evening and welcome to Backyard Farmer. We are so glad to be back on the air and answering all those gardening questions. You can get in touch with us by dialing 1-800-676-5446. You can also contact us via email with those questions and pictures, and that address is byf@unl.edu. Tell us where you live and give us as much information as you can about that question. If you do miss any episodes of Backyard Farmer, you can watch repeat showings here on Nebraska Public Media, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us throughout the year on our Facebook page. As always, we like to start with samples, and you brought us the entire population of bumblebees, Wayne, or close.
Let's not accuse me of that. It's not a mass bumblebee genocide here. So we're getting to that point of the year where we're going to start seeing the queens starting to fly and zigzag low over the ground. They may stop and investigate a pile of leaves or a clump of grass, and I see they want to see all the lovely bumblebees that I've got in here. And I've got them separated out by species. So these are 6 common species up in my neck of the woods in the Northeast. I know it's not in English, but kind of gives you an idea. They're separated by queens, workers, and males. And you can see a lot of variation in some of these. If I can get them to come over here to I'm gonna go on the other side. This is one of my really common ones up here. This is the black and gold. You can see it has a really large queen. The workers are a little bit smaller, but similarly colored. And then the males, if they can get really close, have really big eyes compared to the rest of them. You can see them with those really big eyes sticking out on the sides. And these ones actually search and perch. And when something that looks close to a bumblebee flies by that they think might be a queen, they'll fly after it and try and grab it to mate. So they're aggressive in that regard. Another one in here on the opposite side, down here, the Pennsylvanicus, if I can get them to look at that one. This one has actually been petitioned with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for endangered species status, which is really interesting. It's declined in parts of its range. However, here it's one of my most common species that I run into. And the males are highly variable in color. And I'm gonna pull one out, see how good they can get at this. Try and hold it really still. But it's got an orange tip on the little orange tail hairs there are orange. I don't know, might be asking too much of the cameras. They're trying really hard. But they have an orange tip. And if you try and use some of the keys and you put that in there that there's orange on it, it throws it way off, but it's a lot of fun. So watch for them right now. Leave the queens alone. They're trying to start nests, and if they're investigating an area, just remember they're only an annual nest. They're not a permanent nest like honeybees can be around for a while.
Excellent. Thank you, Wayne. All right, Matt, what exactly is the pile in front of you here?
Oh, it's a pile of different seed. There's some really good names with these. We have fast grass, smart seed, it's got a diploma, and some just regular grass seed. Just looking at different labels of seed that we have. And there's many different types if you go to any box store, and they have really good names. But you want to look at the back of the bag or the back of the box or whatever you have, and you want to check and see what kind of grass seed is actually in these. So this one is labeled fast grass, and it's very, very rapid. And the reason being is that it has almost all of annual ryegrass into it. So it's a seed that will grow really fast, and then come winter, it's probably going to die, or it's going to die out through the summer, just because it's not really a perennial grass, it's an annual grass. So when you're looking for something that's fast, don't always go by just the label. You want to make sure you look and see what's in them. So like tall fescue over here, it's only tall fescue. So it has 3 different types of tall fescue in it. And then you get into the smart seed, it has tall fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, perennial rye, which is a good mix for a lot of lawns that we have around here in Nebraska. So just make sure you're checking it out. We have done some trials looking at some of these, and the rapid grass with the annual rye will look really good for a period of time, but if you go through next year, you're going to be reseeding it again because it's an annual. So you want to pick the right one, and if you have a spot that needs grass in 2 weeks, that might be your choice, but in the fall, come back and you're gonna have to reseed it with something else. And then they also have various ones with fertilizer, seed coatings. So there's a bunch of different types you can use. They're not all bad. They're all trying to help that seed get in the best possible situation it can to grow. So check the labels and know what seed you're planting.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt.
Well, Matt, isn't there like some of the patch products and things that you can get some weedy grass seeds in there, or is that still an issue for some?
Yes, so on that label it does say sometimes there's a percentage of weed seed, so it might be 0.01%, so there's always a chance. Some are worse than others. You want to get certified seed, obviously you can get some bad ones, and that's where the weeds come from sometimes.
Excellent.
All right, Lauren, that's...
Well, you know, the plant pathologist always has to bring a plant that doesn't necessarily look like something you want to buy, so this one is a pot that came in their diagnostic lab, and you can just kind of see it's a sickly looking. It's actually a bee balm, and I thought this was a good example to show tonight because people are starting to look at plants to plant. You're going to see annuals coming in to the garden centers, and you're picking things out. Just to be cautious and make sure that you're picking a healthy looking plant, right? But specifically on this one, you can kind of see it has some, just kind of as we close up in there, you can kind of see that distorted growth. Has some rugosity, what we call that roughness in the leaf. It has that breaking color pattern. And in this particular case, this isn't a cultivar that's supposed to have a breaking leaf pattern. This is a situation where it really looks a lot like a virus type symptom. So, you know, really be cautious, make sure you're not selecting something that could be a problem long term. Most of the garden centers are not going to keep this in stock or have that if it looks like this. But just caution you on that. In this particular case, this was one that had a growth regulator injury. It came from a nursery, and they had applied something on accident in a wrong dose, and in this case looks like or mimics a virus. So just a good time to talk about symptoms, talking about quality of those transplants.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. All right, Terry, your debut with your sample.
So we are always trying new plants in the Backyard Farmer garden, and this one really caught my eye last fall. We actually ordered these seeds in, and we've been growing them out. This is called Orange Hat. This is an ultra dwarf tomato, so it's actually only going to grow to be 6 to 9 inches tall. So this is actually fully grown. It has already little tomatoes setting on it, and they will turn orange when they're ready. We do not know what they taste like, so we are hoping that they taste good, but we will let you know. But they are really designed to really be in containers. They will look really cute in containers, multiple planted together. They started out really quick. It didn't take very long to get them up and going. I think this tomato itself right now is probably only 2 months old. So ones that will grow really quick, really fast, and a really fun one, Orange Hat.
And they don't even look like tomatoes.
No.
The plants don't even look like tomatoes.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That'll be fun. All right. Wayne, you get the first set of picture questions, 3 in a row here. This is a Papillion viewer. Says last summer their oak tree was late leafing out. Leaves all started to curl down, became leathery. He picked some off and took some great pictures of these. Leaves never recovered. He wants to know what actually attacked his oaks and how he can keep it from doing that again, and the appropriate timing. And this is from Papillion.
Well, appropriate timing is going to come down to scouting and knowing what time they show up. With aphids, they're one of my favorite things to use the hose on, to spray off, especially if it's a smaller tree that you can reach everything on. If it's a bigger tree, hose will only get what you can reach unless you have a bucket truck and all the extra equipment to go further. You can use a systemic. There's plenty out there on the market that might be labeled for oaks. But for the most part, they're not going to do any lasting damage to the tree. So it may not be anything you need to do anything about at all.
All right, excellent. Your next one is, this is really fun. This was sent to us from a viewer in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's a picture of Backyard Farmer panelist evaluating a corn crop damage, sort of circa 1956, and he's thinking grasshoppers. And his question is whether backyard gardens would have gotten decimated like the field crops, and is there any chance nowadays that we still have this terrible damage by insects?
Well, yes. is the short of the story on that one. Just to kind of give some time frame here, back in, I think it was 2012 or 2013, we had grasshopper populations so high in the western part of the state, they were eating paint off of buildings.
Wow.
So if you think back to some of those early pioneer days where they tell stories about grasshoppers eating screens and paint off of buildings, we had it again in 2012 and 2013. So all it takes is the right set of conditions for those grasshoppers to take off again. And who knows? I'm not the weatherman, so I can't tell you when it's going to be.
All right, thanks, Wayne. Okay, Turf, your first two are actually ones that are, again, they sent us pictures from last fall, which we really do appreciate from our viewers. He calls it quack grass. This is the picture from, you know, a little distance, and then the second picture is the one that indicates what it really is. He does want to know what advice you have for getting rid of this in a turf situation.
Yeah, so this is pennisetum, or fountain grass, and it's generally an ornamental in your landscape, and it seeds out and then it spreads into the grass. So the first step in controlling this is you almost want to get rid of that out of your landscape if you don't want this to keep continuing in your lawn, or have a really thick lawn where it can't compete with it. But that can also be tough. And you'll also notice when you're mowing this, it kind of doesn't cut very well, even with sharp blades. It kind of shears it off, so it has that white appearance. So with this, if you don't have a good stand of grass in the lawn, I would start over. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of weeds in this picture. I would go with the glyphosate application and maybe seed in a new grass. Other than that, there's only one other herbicide that works within a grass, and that's quinclorac, and that would take 2 applications 2 weeks apart, midsummer when it's greened up and growing well.
Right, and there's too much of that to dig, it looks like.
I would say start over. You might have to do 2 applications after it greens up this spring, and then reseed to a new grass.
All right, your next one is a Omaha viewer, and he's wondering why it's sort of blotchy like this. So he's looking at that whitish, and I know this is all over in Lincoln too.
Yeah, and most of the time when you see this blotchiness, especially when we're greening up in the spring, it's different species of grass. And who knows what this one is. It's kind of far away. It could be nimblewill, which will be a little bit later to green up. It could have been crabgrass from last year that's just skeletonized and it's brown, or another type of weed, goosegrass. They all kind of look the same, brown color. So find out kind of what it is. You could scratch it out and reseed new grass in there, or wait, it's still early and it'll green up and you probably won't notice it the rest of the year.
All right, and your final one is actually a Lincoln viewer, and says somebody drove through this lawn in several places when it was dry, and then again recently when it was frozen. So how do you fix this, or is it possible?
The only way to fix that is don't do it. That's the main thing. So anytime it's frozen, like golf courses, they'll shut down, because if they don't, they're going to have these tracks all over the place. I even noticed wheel tracks from last fall when I was doing some spraying, and it was just you crush that plant and it doesn't have time to recover or grow out of it, and then it basically desiccates or dries out and turns brown, so it's off color. A lot of times you wait and it will grow out of it. You'll even see this in the summertime when it's stressed. You'll see wheel tracks, so just try and stay off of there when there's frost, stress, or you're going into winter and it's getting really cold.
All right, thank you, Matt. Okay, Lauren, your first one is a Grand Island viewer, has tomatoes, and he said it's a Rutgers of some sort. They grew very fast, and then the new growth was deformed and curly. And you've got 2 pictures there. He wonders what that is.
Well, and a couple things with this, similar to the plant sample I had earlier. When you have that deformed growth, a lot of times you think either virus or you think some sort of herbicide drift injury in the growth regulator category. If it's one of the plants and it looks like this, it's a good chance it's a virus. If all of your tomatoes in your garden look like this, it's most likely a drift. The way these are cupped down, it looks to me more like a herbicide drift type scenario. If it's a single plant, recommend roguing it out because it is probably a viral infection.
All right. Your next 2 are, again, this was sent from last year. This is a Seward viewer. She had the rust on her hollyhocks, 2 pictures here. And she wants to get rid of this for this coming year. She doesn't want this to happen again. I think the next picture might be the beautiful orange pustules, if we've got that one. Yeah.
Used to do hollyhock rust trials, and it's just beautiful. So, unfortunately, you won't really get rid of it totally. So, when those plants are before you see infections, if you can think back of when you had that start, I'm going to guess in that late June window, somewhere in there. If you can make fungicide applications before that time, rust in general are pretty sensitive to several of the garden fungicides that are on the market. In that particular case, you can use one that would be acceptable for non-fruit-bearing plants. A mycobutanyl product, for example, would work pretty well on that. So just recommend applications. Avoiding overhead irrigation is going to help, but you're still going to have to continue battle that. And if you want to get rid of it, you're going to have to use a chemical.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Okay, Terry, this is 3 pictures from the same viewer. She's in Lincoln. The first is her entire landscape. And then she has a picture of a couple yews and a lilac. And she did say that this whole area, that the lilac has been 3 years. Last year, half of it died. The yews were new last year, but then they died, and they were a replacement for a dwarf spruce that died. She says there's a significant overhang, but they watered. They did use cocoa mulch, cocoa shells for mulch. She's wondering if the pH got changed enough, or what do we think is going on here?
Well, it looks like there's a lot going on. First, really, we need to address kind of the soil. It looks like the soil needs to be completely re-amended, maybe add some organic matter to it. I couldn't tell if it was wet or dry. There was a mention of an overhang that they did add water. That could have been one of the reasons for the yews, because the yews really don't like wet feet. So that could have been one of the reasons the yews, and I believe she had spruces before. They're kind of in the same category where they don't like to be wet all the time. So if you're watering it and you don't have good drainage, and often you don't have good drainage up next to the house, that could have been a problem. The lilac, I couldn't see the whole thing, so I couldn't see the part that died. They do have buds coming out, so I think that's good. There were some dead that could have, maybe they pushed out earlier and we kind of got that cold snap again. That could have been part of that. But I would say leave the lilac to see how it will work and how it will come out of it here with the next few weeks. But before I replanted anything for those yews and stuff, I would be adding organic matter. I would be putting a good 2 to 3 inches layer of mulch down there. And then if you are using anything that is kind of an evergreen type plant, they don't like to have wet feet, so don't overwater it. So make sure that you're checking the soil before you actually do water.
All right, thank you, Terry. Well, we have an outbreak of avian flu here in Nebraska for the first time since 2015. While our poultry industry is being hit hard with the disease, you might want to pay attention if you raise chickens in your backyard or on your acreage. We asked University poultry veterinarian Don Reynolds to explain what home chicken owners need to know about this issue.
Avian influenza is a viral disease that spreads through birds, wild birds, backyard chickens, commercial birds, etc., and we've had an outbreak this year, and it's very, very serious. The commercial industry has been hit very, very hard in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, primarily in turkeys and commercial laying chickens. We have had an outbreak in broiler chickens, and we had a very serious one right here in Nebraska, where nearly 1 million birds had to be depopulated because of this disease. We're real concerned about backyard producers because typically, let me contrast this with commercial producers. The commercial world, the chickens are monitored, or the poultry are monitored very, very closely. They know on a daily basis what the feed intake is, the water intake, what the behaviors of those birds are. However, in backyard flocks, they're not so closely monitored. And they may go out once or twice a day to feed or water the birds. Sometimes they see all the birds, sometimes they don't. But even more so, the birds typically are housed outside and they have access to wild birds and wild waterfowl. And in this season where we have all these migrating waterfowl and birds and And now we have spring upon us and a lot of wet, moist conditions. This is the perfect time for the spread of the virus. Well, unfortunately, one of the typical symptoms are a bird just dies. Unexpectedly, they go out, maybe 3 or 4, whatever, in their flock, and then more will do that. However, there are other things, respiratory signs, coughing, sneezing, snicking. They may have diarrhea, they may be lethargic and depressed, so these are all signs. Now, very important, if you suspect your birds have avian influenza, don't be afraid to call someone. Don't be embarrassed. Don't say, oh, well, I don't think so. Let's be sure. You can call the state veterinarian, Dr. Roger Dudley, and his number is on the Department of Agriculture's website. You can call your local veterinarian, and you can call me. We'll get you help. So what we suggest the backyard flock owners do is to limit the exposure to outside and to those wild birds. So bring them inside if you can. Make sure you wall off or separate the feeders and the waterers so that wild birds don't fly in, get a free meal, and expose those their chickens. Just be very, very careful with your chickens. Don't go having swap meets and taking. Now, Nebraska has put a moratorium on any kind of poultry event until at least May 1st. So we're hoping that if we can get through April and May and get through until the summertime, that this will fade away and it will no longer be a problem.
So do make sure those chickens are protected and taken care of, because most of the time that avian flu will kill them, and we do like us our chicken to eat. All right, Wayne, this is an Omaha viewer, 3 pictures here. It's a 10-year-old spruce dropping needles. It's in a tight space, obviously, but she sees these little white spots on the needles in the shedding. Is that bad?
Well,
Yeah.
without seeing it, that sounds just like pine needle scale.
Yeah.
Yes, it does attack spruces as well. That's every little white speck on there is one scale, and this could build up over years, so they may be old ones still sitting on there as the needles hang on. And like Jody was talking about last week with all those scale insects, you can wait for the crawler stage and try and hit them with a topical like a permethrin, or there is one product left on the market. It's kind of hard to find, but if you can find acephate, it's a systemic that does very well for controlling scale insects.
All right, excellent. Let's see, you are next, Matt, and this is a viewer in Omaha. Oh, I'm sorry, this is another scale pictures. So this one, Wayne, was the question, because we talked about this last week, was will the scales get on all those new growth on this euonymus, or are they just going to hang out on the old ones?
Oh, once the crawlers come out, everything's fair game.
Right.
So you either got to pick off the old growth now if it's light and you can pare it down, or you're looking at, like Jody's suggestion with the tape. That was
Right.
great. Double-sided tape, put it around the stem, watch for the crawlers to get stuck on it, and then you can go with the topical.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Okay, now your turn, Matt. This is Omaha viewer, has this one weed right next, or plant right next to a lily and a foxglove, and she doesn't want to pull it out if it's not a weed.
I'd say it's probably a weed. It looks like a wild lettuce to me, prickly lettuce maybe. So I would definitely pull it out, because one will spread everywhere. They grow virtually anywhere. They'll grow in the rocks and in the sidewalks. So.
All right. And then you have 2 pictures on this one. This is a York viewer. They're saying this weed appeared first in like a waste area around a detention cell, a water cell, and now it's spread into the grass in the yard. What is this, and how do they get rid of it?
All right, it looks like curly dock, and it looks like one that's been there for a couple years maybe. It's starting to really set in. Those have a really deep taproot. They're perennial. You don't want to let them go to seed, because they are very widely spread throughout the world, because they have so much seed that they produce, and it can stay in the soil for a long time. So kill it with any broadleaf herbicide really works on those. I would do it sooner than later, because the later it gets in the season, the harder it is to control. And then in the fall, hit it if you have any more.
Okay, all right. Lauren, this is a Waverly viewer, also has a tree losing needles. Started last summer, this spruce. I think we have 3 pictures of this one. Started last summer. He sprayed it with 8 insect control. He used all seasons horticultural oil. He used dormant spray oil. Is this insects or is this disease in this spruce?
It really looks like where it's isolated and you have a single branch being impacted or a portion of the crown like that. Usually that's representative of some sort of canker or some sort of injury to that branch. So take a look down the branch and look if there's any swelling or pitch, and I would recommend pruning that out and just kind of watch and see as you get any other branches dying, just look for any infection that's localized. It will fill in if you just lose a couple branches there and you may be fine.
All right, and your next 2 pictures, since you love trees so much, this
Love
is
trees.
also
Get out the
blue
chainsaw.
spruce. This is a Myrna, Nebraska viewer, large blue spruce. The very top is dead, and she doesn't want to lose the tree.
This is actually somewhere, is there another picture too? Or
I think
not?
there's another picture.
Actually show another picture too, because these are all similar types of scenarios with different ages of trees, really.
Right.
These are all cankers, and the best thing to do is to avoid this is to make sure the trees are not stressed. So particularly if we get a lot of drier conditions and it's not in an irrigated landscape, you know, making sure that there's adequate moisture when we get into those summer months, because that can predispose the tree to different canker infections.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Terry, your first one, I think, is a shrub rose with issues. And if that is indeed the case, then the question is, that's what they look like right now. What should be done?
Well, that is what they look like right now. You can actually go in and prune all the dead. You'll be able to tell the kind of browner, not the red twigs. Those are going to all be the dead ones. You can prune those out completely. I wouldn't go too crazy yet. We could get maybe a little bit of cold weather yet, but they are starting to leaf out, and it is about that time to start pruning. I know that the pruning workshop was done at Sunken Gardens last week, so their 2,700 roses that they have there were all pruned last week. So yeah, go ahead, prune it up. I'd also add some mulch and get that bed ready for the season.
All right, and your next 2 pictures here are a Lincoln viewer. She has the creeping phlox with winter windburn. She's just wondering whether she should cut it back to new growth here.
Yep, I would go ahead, cut that back to wherever you can find that new growth. You can also, when it grows and you get the flowers, you can actually prune those flowers back because these look kind of leggy. Prune those flowers back, get a second kind of flush of flowers, and it will actually branch and be a little more bushy for you too. So pruning twice, but it will make your plant look better.
All right, thanks, Terry. Well, we're going to go inside our greenhouse this week to see what's going to be planted in a few weeks out in our backyard farmer garden. All of the usual suspects are already sprouting, as well as a few new cuttings. Here's Terry to tell us more.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're back in the greenhouse. It's a little too cold to be doing a lot outside except for cleaning up the garden. So we're just gonna look at really what we've done this year. Last week we talked about what we did starting in October. October started our cuttings for a lot of our annual coleus and stuff. So we've got those all up and going, several cuttings throughout the winter. As you can see, there are different stages, and we're really excited to put our containers together with these great looking plants. We also have lots of our veggies in different stages of growth. We have some tomatoes that we've just started and some tomatoes that are a little bit further along. We're really excited to be able to try a lot of these new All-America Selection tomatoes and a few of the extra little vegetables that they're gonna have, and we're gonna show you those as we go along in the summer. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
Right now it is time for the lightning round. All right, Terry, you're on the docket. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, we have a viewer who would like to know, is there a good cover crop to use for an asparagus bed?
Mulch.
That's a nice answer. This is a viewer north of Sioux City and also a Beatrice viewer. They both have old lilac bushes that are not flowering. They want to know when to cut them down.
You actually, to prune them out, you would just take 1/3 of the largest canes, and that should help. If you're going to prune them right after flowering or about when everybody else's are flowering, and then prune them back because they set their flower buds about a month after they're done blooming.
All right. This is a Soldier, Iowa viewer that has an old spirea, old bridal wreath. Prune that one or cut that one to the ground?
So I would wait because it's a beautiful flowering spirea. It's one of the only ones that I would actually grow. And then as soon as it's done, if you want to regenerate, you can just cut it back.
All right. We have an Omaha viewer whose daffodils are not flowering. What to do?
They probably need to be dug back up and divided. So put a marker there somewhere so you know where they're at, and then do it in the fall.
Excellent. Nice job. All right, Lauren. This is a North Platte viewer.
You're going to ask me if I'm ready?
No, I'm not going to ask you if you're ready. 'Cause, is there lunch meat involved?
No,
or do we have
I'm ready as a fresh morel fried in duck fat. I've been just waiting for that question.
It's all right. All right. My bad on that one. Now we're all hungry. Okay, this is a North Platte viewer who has said, with the prediction being for a very dry summer, should we expect more or less disease in our gardens this year?
Dry summer would be less, typically.
All right. This is a Columbus viewer who does have an awful lot of disease in a fescue lawn and wants to know, is there a fungicide? If so, what and when should it be applied?
Depends on what the disease is, so that's a really hard question. If we're talking fescue, I'm going to guess it's July and August, and they're battling brown patch, and a lot of the turf fungicides would work, myclobutanil, propiconazole, others would be fine.
All right. This is a Southwest Iowa viewer who does have brown patch, or uses Milorganite as their fertilizer, but does want to know how to control the brown patch.
Repeat a previous question.
Right.
Yes.
We have a viewer outside Lincoln who wants to know if they put moldy or kind of rotten produce in their compost bin, will it hurt the compost? Will it actually live?
As long as it's composted correctly.
All right, and composted correctly means how hot?
I don't know the exact temperature.
You got saved by the
Really
lightning.
break it. I got like.
You got saved by the lightning.
Make sure if it's all the way broken down like that and it's going to reach higher temperatures internally, you're going to be fine. The other thing is avoid fertilization in that fescue lawn for that brown patch. In those times, you're not doing it. Listening to Matt, so that's good.
Okay.
They're not fertilizing.
If you
You're
want
not
more
telling them
brown
to.
patch,
You
put
want
more
more,
nitrogen
put more
down.
nitrogen.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
And then water.
Okay,
No water.
Matt, are you ready?
Every day.
Yes.
Excuse you. Yes, it's allergy season for the panel, in case our viewers can't tell. So your first question, Matt, comes to us from Beatrice. They want to know how to kill their zoysia lawn without actually having to move.
Repeated applications of glyphosate are the only way to do it.
Okay. This is a viewer who wants to know if their lawn service has already put down their are they going to have to reapply it again after the ground warms, since it's not 55 degrees yet?
Pre at cool temps will stay there as long as it needs to be, so it'll be good, but it might wear off come July, so you might have to put a second app down.
All right. This is a Holdridge viewer who wants to know the best time of day and the area to use their soil thermometer for accuracy.
Same time every day, usually middle of the day, and probably an area that's what you have most in your lawn.
All right. We have a viewer that has a struggling lawn in Sarpy County, and their soil test came back with high potassium. Could that be part of the problem?
I would not think so unless it's crazy high.
All right. This is an Omaha viewer who wants to know whether they should use a pre-emerge on zoysia.
Yeah, you can use a pre-emergent on zoysia. It ain't going to affect the zoysia. It's going to affect any other weeds that come into it.
All right. Are we going to give Wayne a pass because he can't speak?
I think I'm okay for now. We'll see. I might only get one or two.
All right. Wayne, are you ready?
I'll try.
This is a Frederick, Colorado viewer who wants to know how to prevent the broccoli worms from coming back and annihilating his broccoli.
You can't prevent them from coming back. You either got to treat for them or be diligent about picking them off.
All right. We have an Ogallala viewer who wants to use beneficial insects, and he wants to know whether buying praying mantis egg cases online are worth it.
They're not really worth it. They either eat each other or they disperse and eat lots of other things indiscriminately.
All right. We have an Aurora viewer who has iris borer. She thinks she's gotten the rhizomes cleaned up, but she does want to know when to apply an insecticide to kill the moths before they lay their eggs.
it might actually be easier to cut them off later. So when you see those tunnels starting in the leaves, you trim them off and you keep them from getting to the rhizomes.
All right, we have a Seward viewer who had scale on her peonies. She usually cleans the stems up in the fall, but she's wondering whether she should allow them to stand so she can use horticultural oil on the peony stems.
I'd clean them out right away when they're senesce in the fall.
All right, nice job, all. Looks to me like Matt
Got one.
It's been so long.
won, and Terry gets plants of the week.
All right. So I have 3 things here. 2 that are just more ornamental, but the first one we're going to start off with, this is Harry Lauder's walking stick. It is a shrub. It's got like these real contorted stems that are pretty cool, very ornamental. Sometimes you get a rogue one and you just need to cut that one out. This one is also a great one that if you have Japanese beetle, this is going to be probably the first plant they're going to go to. So you can actually use that as your trap plant to find out whether or not they're showing up. And then there's Nectaplum and peach. Just because we normally don't ever get these fruits because they're going to be out and freeze. They are a beautiful ornamental tree that you can plant and have them flowering in your backyard at least for a couple days. So.
All right, thanks. Okay, gang, let's see. Let's go a little quickly here. This, your first one, Wayne, is Grand Island viewer. One picture wants to know whether this thing should be removed from the tree. Is it a bad thing or will it spread?
That's a witch's broom. It can be caused from anything from a fungus to a virus to phytoplasma to areophyte mites, environmental conditions. Prune it out.
All right, excellent. Let's see, your next one here is Midtown Omaha. They found this on their spirea. They wonder what it is.
It's a Chinese praying mantis egg case.
So,
or Othecas.
Yeah, good guys in there, or were in there. Okay, Matt, you have a clumpy plant question. Two pictures on this one. It has started showing up more and more in the landscape, greens up early, smells like onion. They've never seen it flower. They want to know how to get rid of it without killing the grass, and can they dig it up without it spreading?
This is one that comes up really early and it shows itself before the grass gets growing. So wild garlic would be a good one that it could be, or wild onion, same thing. I mean, not the same thing, but 2 different plants, but they grow the same way. It's kind of that clump farming, and they have a bulbs underneath, and then sometimes they do set fruit bulbs on top. So if you don't have that many of them, dig them out, make sure you get the bulbs, and that would be the best way to control them. If it's a lawn that's covered with them, 2,4-D actually works really well on them with a couple applications early on. So when we're doing that, we want to be careful because we're using 2,4-D, but now, when a lot of stuff isn't greening up or if stuff's budding out, you want to be careful, I guess, too. But that'd be the time to do it when you first see it.
All right. Your next one is 2 pictures of what is this fast-growing weed on the south side of a house in a place mulched with rock, and it's also in the grass across the sidewalk.
That time of year, winter annuals are just going crazy. So field pennycress, there's some henbit in there. So treating those with most herbicides control it, broadleaf herbicides. If you go with something with carfentrazone in it, when it's really cold, that will speed the process up.
All right, excellent. Well, we have yet some more dying things here for you, Lauren. Your first 2 pictures here are, again, blue spruce dying from the top, start at the top, move slowly down, gravel road on a farmstead.
Chainsaw? No
25
chainsaw.
to 30 feet tall. It's about 30 years old, though.
Yeah, that's the age where you start to see some canker activity. So again, I think this is just like the previous sample skim that we were looking at. And it is some sort of fungal canker. If you can safely get to it and prune it out, it's fine. It's not going to kill the tree, but over time at that age, they are going to continue to see more cankers.
All right, and then you have 3 pictures, I think, on this next one. This is Austrian pines in a windbreak out by Denton. They're showing this on some of the branches. And then on the ends, the needles are looking like this. Last week, Jody talked about a moth. Is it moth or is it a disease?
I believe in this case, it looks like it could be Sphaeropsis tip blight, which is a fungal disease that we see in pines. For that, recommendation would be fungicide, if it's extensive, fungicide applications at mid-candle elongation. So right, or when those candles are just starting to emerge, and then making a fungicide application, you can kind of see when it's killing them and that to protect them. The other one, I was trying to decide if it was actually a pitch and canker or if it was a blister rust.
Okay.
It looks either way, prune it out.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Terry, you have one picture here. This is a Lincoln viewer who wants to know whether they can plant a new tree as close to the old stump as their measuring tape here or not.
I would probably go a little bit further. Normally you want to go probably at least 3 feet, minimum up to 6 feet. I can't remember what tree it was, but that's a big tree and it's going to have a lot of roots underneath there. You want to give that new tree as much of help as possible to get it started, so move it away.
All right, your next
They're going to
one.
have mushrooms in a year, probably.
Probably. You can go visit them.
Your next one is a misshapen white pine. It's grown this weird top. Can they prune the top without killing it?
Yes and no. I probably wouldn't. When you prune the top, then that is where the whole new growth is coming up and it'll make your tree taller. I would probably prune that kind of one off to the side a little bit. It kind of looks like it was maybe like a Christmas tree and they kind of had pruned it initially. So now it's kind of growing more in kind of this, I don't know, snuffleupagus type look. Honestly, it's you know, something that I would probably keep because it's
Kind of cool.
it's kind of cool and you make it a focal point in your landscape.
All right, and then you have two here that are a 15-year-old red maple. This is Omaha. The bark is falling off. The second picture, I think, shows how it's in the ground. Can this be treated, or is this chainsaw material?
So Lauren will be coming with his chainsaw with this one. Unfortunately, this one was planted way too deep. You need to see that root flare. And this one probably was sun scald, so in the wintertime, the sun hits it, it heats up, melts, and then it freezes, and that's probably why that bark is sloughing off.
All right, thank you, Terry. Well, it just would not be springtime on Backyard Farmer without Jeff coming around to help us with a few pruning tips. A few weeks ago, he picked up those loppers and shears. He gives us some guidelines on pruning shrubs in the spring.
We're out here in the middle of March, but you're actually seeing this in April. So the timing of this is a little different, but we'll go through some of the main steps in pruning some of our flowering shrubs in early spring. Typically for many things, so this is a forsythia here, but for forsythia or lilacs and our viburnums, a lot of times the recommendation will be is to wait till after flowering to go ahead and do the pruning. And in your particular case, that may work well for you. Sometimes though, we may have a shrub like this that is just so overgrown that this is really the right time to do it. Before we have a lot of things coming on, the leaves and the flowers coming on, we can get in and really see what we have. And I might decrease the flowering a little bit here, but over the next 2 or 3 seasons, it'll actually increase the amount of flowering and appreciation you have for that shrub in your landscape. So we're gonna look at a couple things. First off, we'll talk about just making sure you have some gloves, your safety glasses, make sure you've cleaned up your pruners, they're nice and sharp for you so you're ready to go. And then, you know, we're gonna look at removing some of the biggest canes, which really applies to any of our big flowering shrubs, these early spring flowering shrubs. We'll start off removing the larger canes and then do some shaping afterwards. Another approach may be to come in and take this clearly to the ground, what we might call a rejuvenation pruning. That sometimes is a good thing to do. And some of the other shrubs, maybe like a spirea, sometimes will benefit from that. Certainly your butterfly bush, your beautyberry, you're gonna go ahead and cut those to the ground. But what I tend to find when we do that to something like a forsythia or lilac is that you end up getting another flush of growth, and at some point you have to start going through that process of taking out the largest canes. Usually about 1/3 is what we shoot for each year, and then kind of work at pruning that. And over a period of time, again, over a 2 or 3 year period, you'll end up getting that shrub back to the way you really want it to be. So also this time of year, couple things to look at. If you have some trees in your yard, so another tree that a lot of times we'll have questions about are crab apples. So should we prune it now? Shouldn't we prune it now? And really any other plant, if you have a broken branch, something that's died back, something that's crossing, we can go ahead and take those out this time of year. Something like a crab apple, another plant that we might want to wait for it to be done flowering before we go in and do a lot of pruning. I tend to wait till midsummer for those to reduce the potential for suckering. If you have a sugar maple in your yard or one of the maples, again, you could do some pruning now. Sometimes people worry about the sap flow that we get off of those and it being unsightly. So I would recommend, again, waiting until after it's leafed out to do some of that pruning, and that way it reduces the amount of sap that you'll see from that tree. So that's one of those other areas that you can kind of think about as you're walking around your yard.
The key to good pruning in the spring is to know what shrubs you have and then their pattern of dormancy. Some you can prune, some you need to wait. Also, we do want to remind you that if you like our show and the features you see here every week, please visit our YouTube channel, hit subscribe so you can watch this and many other great features from past shows. So we're a lot of fun all the time. All right, a lot of fun. It's your turn. So, this is
Fun guy.
This is mites in the bathtub. So this is a bathtub, and those are mites. They're attracted to sunlight. He's done some pruning. He's done some caulking. He still has these. He's done all sorts of things to clean them out of the bathtub. And this is Norfolk next to a golf course.
Oh.
So it's up in your territory anyway.
My home turf.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell these are clover mites because they have the really two long front legs out in front of them. If you zoom in real close and look, you can see them. Plus, they're also that orangish tint on the legs. If you smash these, they're going to leave a reddish purple to brown smear that stains. So don't smash them. Vacuum cleaner works really well for picking them up. If you want to try and keep them from getting into your house when they're not wanting to be outside, you need at least 2 feet of non-plant material on the outside edge of your house.
Oh my.
And mulch is fine, but you don't want living plant material because they feed on grass, a lot of ornamental plants, chrysanthemums not being one of them, that they don't like those. So target some of that. I think it's Texas A&M actually has a very nice selection of what they do and don't eat and how you can kind of target them.
Excellent. All right. Nice to know. Okay, Matt, this is an Aurora viewer. Said the company that sorry. One more for you again.
Salt blaster, that would be.
Yeah, what was that? What was that insect?
That's a typical either spring or fall question on this show. That's a western conifer seed bug. They're coming out of their hiding places from the winter, and they like to eat seeds of pines and spruces.
All right, excellent. So now it's your turn again, Matt. Right. I keep trying to skip
psych.
We can still blast it.
Okay, the company that seeded their lawn used some sort of netting with straw in it to hold the seed down. They want to know how to get rid of the netting without pulling up the grass. And this is Aurora.
Well, usually, this type of netting usually you leave there. If it's an issue where it's heaving and coming up, then maybe you do need to so it doesn't get stuck in the mower because it might have that net on top of the straw. If not, you could pull it off, but wait for the seed to come up and start shooting through a little bit, not too much, and then you could start peeling it back, and that way the erosion won't be a problem once the seed's up.
All right, and these next 2 pictures are actually from Rock talked last week about breaking up plugs once you aerate. And this person has several spots where there was hardly any grass. It looked like this. Can they still overseed this? And then does it have to be covered? And should it be one of those pellet-looking mulches to cover it?
Yes, you can definitely I would overseed it. And then depending on how much water you can apply to it, a mulch is always going to be better, and it's going to require less watering. So any type, even straw, not too thick, but some of those pellet mulches work good too. They're a little more expensive, but they do cover the ground and keep that seed bed wet, enhancing germination.
All right, thank you, Matt. Okay, Lauren, you have 3 pictures here. This is a Bloomfield zooer. This is a Bloomfield viewer, and this is autumn purple ash. And it's been in the lawn for about 15 years, issues with browning of leaves and then tracks on the trunk. And the pictures he sent us are from June of 2021. So we've got kind of this stuff going on the trunk. I think we do have one that maybe shows some rust on the foliage on this one. So
yeah,
there's the connection, and then I
yeah,
think
so
your
when
third
you-
picture is the leaves.
When you have some of those points, and if that is on the tree, like a main point where we're connecting in a crotch area on the tree, it is potentially like a hazard tree if it's close to the home or something, so be careful with that. You're not going to be able to really recover from that. That's something that probably that tree is weak in that area. It looks like it could have some sloughing bark in that case. There's a good chance long term it's not going to make it. The rust is something that is not causing this, so that's a separate issue, and I really wouldn't recommend treating the tree for the rust.
All right, excellent. Okay, Terry, this actually came to us, oh no, mushrooms. I forgot, we have mushrooms growing in a fairy garden, and she just sent this picture for us to say, gosh, isn't this fun?
Yeah, it is fun. I couldn't tell. I thought it was actually like a collected mushroom not coming up there. So I thought, and maybe
might
some
be.
clarity, I thought that maybe it was something collected off a tree and put in the fairy garden, but it is very fun. It looks like it just from the picture, it looked like it could be a conch that was pulled off a tree in place, but I may be completely wrong. If I am, please write back and tell us.
Or not. Okay, Terry, this was sent to us in winter from Omaha. It is red twig dogwood, and a whole bunch of them have been showing this really weird growth. New growth is spindly, skinny, and small, no insects, no appearance of disease. They've been pruning it out, but it doesn't seem to improve. What is this? Any ideas at all?
So looking at this, the first time I looked at it, I thought it was drift. So a lot of ornamentals and shrubs that have colored bark will really get attacked by drift. So some kind of 2,4-D or glyphosate or something. I can go back to Lauren. I can't think of any disease on dogwoods that would be stem like this. Really, the only stem one that I can think of is canker. So everything else I could think of was leaf.
Yeah,
So
it's really an unusual
Right.
appearance. I mean, I think it comes to mind are some of our viruses or things like that, which could do that, but I've never seen that on
haven't
either.
red twig dogwood. So
Right. Okay, Terry, your next two are a viewer who was so glad to see that she's not the only one that had brown coral bells. She does want to know, should she go ahead and cut them to the ground or leave the leaves? And then she also sent an endless summer blooming on old growth. She's always had them, so she's wondering, she cuts these canes down every single year, and then obviously she thinks she's not going to have any flowers. Is she correct? And should she get rid of these altogether or keep trying?
So endless summer will bloom on both new and old. So you could leave it and just kind of clean it up. And then you would get new and old, and then you would actually have more flowers that way. And then the coral bells, yes, go ahead and clean them up till you see new growth coming up. There should be some new growth coming up from the crown. However, those do heave quite a bit. So because it being so dry this year, you might have gotten some death out of that. So just be careful.
All right, thank you, Terry. Well, we are starting with announcements of really fun things in the gardening world. Our first one is going to be a Holy Trinity Church Festival of Flowers here in Lincoln on May 14th. We'll have more information about that one. That will be a whole lot of fun and beautiful, of course. Our second one is Greenhouse Days, which is Harmony Nursery and Daylily Farm, April 18th through the 30th. We have 9 to 5:30 Monday through Friday and 9 to 3 on Saturdays. And our third one is Spring Affair. And Spring Affair plant sale this year is April 29 and April 30th at Lancaster County Event Center. So really fun stuff. We have 45 seconds, and Matt, we had one sent in by the Master Gardeners. You have 45 seconds now, 30, to answer how to control henbit, creeping Charlie, and purple dead nettle. Move.
Good luck.
20 seconds.
oh man, you got it.
So most of those henbit is one early season one, and then you got some later ones. But most products that contain, let's say, a combination of, let's say, 2,4-D, MCPP, dicamba, and then some have sulfentrazone in them, or some have carfentrazone in them, like speed zone. So some of those that have multiple modes of action are going to work a lot better on a lot of those harder to control weeds, especially early when it's cool too.